And welcome back, everybody, to the TV show podcast. I'm Jay Black, joined by Rhea Hughes, an internationally best-selling author, Angelo Cataldi, author of the book Loud, which you can pick up right now at angelocataudi.com. That is the history of his time at WIP. And Angelo, people love this book. You've sold how many copies?
I don't know how many copies. I know that if you want a hard copy version, you should try to order it ASAP because I have most of the ones that are left. They have pretty much sold that run out, and they've decided, I never heard of this, they're going to paperback in about a week.
So if you want the version of this, you should gift the hardback version. AngeloCataudi.com should be in the show notes. Click on it, buy that book.
And let's give a little plug. You have a book signing on Friday, correct?
I have a book signing on Friday at Chickies and Pizza, South Philly from 11 to 1. And I have a book signing on Saturday in Malton at Chickies and Pizza from 12 to 2. But otherwise, I've really done very little to promote the book, right, Rhea?
Wait, so Marlton, that's my hometown. I might have to stop by, Angelo.
I think you should stop by and purchase some books.
Well, here's what I'm just going to say this. I know you don't want to talk too much about it, but not only is this book your history, it is, I think, a history of Philadelphia sports and the rise of a radio format that, this was one of the very first radio stations in the country to go to an all sports format. And you were there from the very beginning. So if you're interested just in the history of, media, it's an important book to get. Yep. You should go out and get it right now.
All I can say is it tells the truth about Rhea and how valuable she was to our show.
Thank you.
Well,
you're very sweet.
Let's talk about the opposite of valuable. Let's start with something this was a bugaboo, speaking of the radio show, we used to talk about all the time. And I got to give a shout out to Jared Clapper, our producer. He's got a podcast called the Continental Sports Podcast. And I think I got that right. And I heard this on his podcast. I was listening to his podcast and he brought this up. It wound up, it was a story from Barstool Sports. It's Charissa. Is it Charissa? Charissa Thompson. Basically went on a podcast and said, I was a sideline reporter. And when I couldn't get the story, I just made it up because I knew if I said we weren't getting enough third downs or we got to play harder, no coach would ever come out and say I said the wrong thing. Like I wouldn't get in trouble if I did that. And this is something, Angela, we talked about all the time on the old show, that the sideline reporters did essentially nothing, added nothing to the broadcast beyond those moments where they would get some information like somebody's hurt, not coming back, that sort of thing. But the sort of we got to go to them to ask them what the coach thinks they need to do in the second half. Didn't add much. I wanted to get your thoughts on this.
You don't want my thoughts on it. We have someone here who was a sideline reporter.
Yes.
So, Rhea, what's it like? Describe what it was like to do it and what you see today when you're looking at it.
Well, here's where I will say sideline reporters get a bad rap because all we think of them is those worthless halftime interviews. So Charissa Thompson is not wrong that they're worthless. It doesn't mean you can make up them. Sideline reporting, you would be in pregame meetings. You meet with the players, you meet with the coach. You kind of are the one who's kind of coming up. You're putting on an entertainment entity for 3 hours that has a game as the main meal, like you're at Thanksgiving. And the sideline reporter is coming up with the cranberry, the mashed potatoes, the stuffing, all that kind of stuff. I learned early on as doing a sideline reporter, I would be getting all this great stuff on the sideline. And I'd be telling the director, got this, I got that. They would feed half of it to the color guy and the main analyst, and they would use it, and then they'd go to me, and I'm like, listen, you've used all my stuff. But here's where the problem is.
What you just said.
Yeah, exactly. What you just stole from me. So, the sideline reporters do a lot. Here's where I will tell you, the halftime thing, we all know that stinks. If you remember back in the Super Bowl, Angelo, I believe it was between the Ravens and the 40, I'm trying to remember, whenever the lights went out. Do you remember the Super Bowl where the lights went out and they were out for 31 minutes? Well, CBS had decided to do away with the sideline reporters. And we were stuck with poor Steve Tasker, a former player who had no idea how to get information from the people you needed. CBS backtracked after that and went back to them. The sideline reporter, all that stuff you see on the sidelines where the players are arguing with each other, there's a rule. The NFL has a rule that you are not allowed to report stuff that you overhear, but you can transmit to the booth stuff you see. You are allowed to say, hey, I saw this. That's, they're not always with the camera on the sidelines. The sideline reporter going, these two guys are arguing on the sidelines. So the sideline reporter really gives a lot of background information. So the biggest problem I have with Charissa Thompson is not that she said it. It was the arrogance and cavalier and casualness with which she said, I've said this before and I didn't get fired, but I made stuff up. That's what mostly bothered me, because she played into what most of America thinks about sideline reporters, and it's disrespectful.
That's beautiful.
I need to make this a gender thing for a second, because I don't understand this, right? We ended the wing bowl because, one of the main reasons was we objectified women, and it was appalling to people, and it was the right time to do it. Most of the sideline reporters are eye candy. Charissa Thompson is beautiful. They're all gorgeous. Erin Andrews, her friend, gorgeous. Look at them. Most of them are eye candy, right? Cheerleaders, the girls gyrating around. So many. Aren't those objectifications also? Why do we even have these things anymore? If we're really going to draw the line on being respectful toward both genders, why do these things exist? First of all, the sideline reporters are useless. You know that. Oh, those interviews when the coaches coming out or going in at the half.
Those are useless. I just spent 10 minutes telling you everything sideline reporters do, you jackass.
I got it, but that's the point. Is if they're useless with the information, then the only reason they're there is because they're gorgeous and we get to look at it. And no, that is not right, and that should be stopped also. Rhea, I'm getting rid of all sideline reporters, and I'm taking the cheerleaders with them. I'm what you call a feminist.
I don't think so.
I think we peaked with the booger mobile. I think it's all been downhill since then.
Yeah, that was terrible.
I think that you touched on a really interesting point, Rhea, and I think that this is my main problem with it, that the NFL has all these rules. And they used to call it the no fun league. I think it still is the no fun league. And they have incentivized the coaches and the players to say nothing. The ideal coach and player is the one that, as they're walking out, goes, taking it one game at a time. We're going to just do our best we can. And that's exciting and interesting to nobody. And I do think that an embrace of, hey, have a little bit of character would make all of this more interesting, including the reports that you get from the
more into a peek of the actual sidelines would be interesting. And just a note, Angelo, I don't think we ever noticed this, but Nick Sirianni actually acknowledged it to the WIP morning show. I think in one of his interviews like 2 weeks ago, he never does them. And we asked him, Joe asked if he got fined, and he wouldn't say, but I think he thinks there's nothing to gain from this. So he doesn't even do them.
So the fact is, if they give us a report from him in the middle of a game, they're making that one up too.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
That's it. It's garbage. The fact that you can make something up because you already know what he's going to say, then don't bother with it. It's worthless.
Speaking of worthless, David Zaslav is back in the news.
God, you are obsessed with him.
Well, this is interesting, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on this very quickly. Coyote versus Acme, which is a $70 million animated movie. I could care less about it. I don't care about that was my least favorite of the Warner Brother cartoons anyway. They spent $70 million on it, and they were going to do a tax write-off on it like they did for Batgirl, because they figured it would save them more money to take the $30 million write-down than it would to try to make a profit on this thing, either through streaming or by releasing it out into the world. And there was a huge backlash from the talent involved, basically saying, hey, we put all of our effort into doing this thing. We want the world to see it. And, the backlash from the Warner Brothers, they're going to release it now because of all the backlash, because this is their third movie that they were going to do this to. And Batgirl got, there was a lot of people that just wanted to see it. Warner Brothers' response to this was, we are a business, and this is a business decision. And this content is going to cost us money, and we can make more money through a tax write-off. That's what we're going to do. And I just had, a lot of what we talk about on this show is the intersection of art and commerce. All of the stuff we watch exists because people want to make money. And do you think that a company that makes content has an obligation to the content first or the money first, is my question to you. And should I be upset about this? Angela, you
won't take this.
You should put this into your comedy act. It's always commerce. You understand?
Exactly.
The only art is an accident in the pursuit of money. Sometimes in the pursuit of money, they make a great movie anyway, but it is not the number one goal when you're making it. It's money. And if you don't, why the hell do you think all these Marvel movies are out? All these because they're the ones that make the money. There's no art there. It's money. No reason to talk about this any further, Rhea. It's money. We work for
and I will say, I loved Coyote versus Acme. So I'm in the minority with you, Jay. I thought it was always my favorite part.
Right. Well, it's okay.
It will suck. I promise you, it will suck.
I probably will.
Speaking of suck,
yes.
I want to move on to this Matt Rife guy. This one's a little bit closer to my heart. I sent you guys the video of him. Were you aware of this guy before I sent you this article in this video?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
No.
I had watched, I find all, that's how I found Nate Bargatze. When I'm flipping around on Netflix, I like comedy specials, because I watch a lot of dark stuff and I like to be entertained. And I love Nate Bargatze. I'd never heard of him. So I popped onto Matt Rife, and I would say I watched about 15 minutes of it. And I was somewhat entertained. He might be a little bit young for me, but yeah, I am familiar with him.
So he's if you don't know him, he's a huge star on TikTok. He blew up huge over the pandemic, and he has a huge female following because he is objectively a very attractive young man. My wife recently said to me, unrelated to anything we're talking about, I said, oh man, I'd love to be as famous as somebody like Matt Rife. And she said, well, you could be if you were, and then she just trailed off. And I was like, if I was what? And she was like, well, and of course she meant hot. If I was hot, maybe I'd be more popular. But he is facing a huge backlash because he has this big female following, and he opened his show with a domestic violence joke. Essentially, the joke is he's with his friend at a restaurant. One of the waitresses has a black eye. The friend says, it's weird that they would have her out as the face of the restaurant. They should put her in the kitchen. And Matt's response is, and this is his joke, not mine. Don't get mad at me, everybody. His joke was, well, if she could cook, she wouldn't have the black eye. That's essentially the joke.
Wow,
right?
That's hilarious. Wow.
Yeah, it's Angela can't stop laughing. He's just laughing uproariously at how funny this is.
I know a lot about this because I really you're in the business, but I love stand-up comedy. And this guy, I will give you the name of a guy who does the same kind of totally edgy stuff, is also great looking and kills with it every time.
I know who you're going to say.
His name is Jeselnik.
Yep.
Anthony Jeselnik. And you will see you want to watch a guy do stuff that you could not believe any comic would try. And here's how he does it. There's two things he does. Number one, he comes out and presents himself as a contemptible human being. You have to hate him. He's a bad person. That's his persona. I know that he's really that way. That's his persona. Yeah. And the second thing is, and this is where Rife fails, Jeselnik is funny. This guy stinks. This tells you how much lower the bar is on social media if this guy's a star on TikTok. He's a star on TikTok because he looks good, not because his material's good. He stinks. And if you want, just go look at Anthony. You must know him, right, Jay?
Oh yeah, I knew exactly you were going to bring up, because Jeselnik's whole thing is exactly what you're saying. This is a contemptible joke from a contemptible person, and I'm going to make you laugh at this. But really, the joke is that I'm saying this because I'm awful, and you can feel free to laugh at me because I'm the bad guy for saying it. It's a psychological shift. And I just want to say this. You guys, this is a street joke. This is, I saw Nathan Rabin talk about this on Twitter. A street joke is one that, like, when somebody goes, hey, I got a good joke for you, and they start telling you a joke. He adapted a street joke into a stand-up joke, which in my world is a huge no-no. That is considered like total hack stuff. You never do that. It's like, because there's 15 different ways of making that joke, from Truly Tasteless Joke 7 or whatever that you bought. Listen, I like hating on anybody better looking than me, but you're exactly right, Angela, that Jeselnik does this the right way, and Rife really flopped it there. Although, Rhea, I just want to touch on this real fast. You did watch 15 minutes of it. I didn't watch the special. Was the rest of it in this vibe, or was it?
I wasn't, I had it on, like, like when I would do comedy or stuff like that, that's kind of stuff when I'm doing stuff around the kitchen. I had it on. I was amused by some of it, and some of it was like, that's not, he did, like Nate Bargatze. When I turned him on, I sat down and watched it.
Yeah.
He's great.
He didn't grab me.
Great.
I mean, it was okay. It wasn't like, I didn't hear the black eye joke. If I'd have heard that, I've been like, because I love that people are saying he's a victim of cancel culture. That's not a victim of cancel culture. No. When you say that a woman has a black eye because she can't cook, you're basically saying her partner punched her in the eye. That's not cancel culture. That's just something you should never say or put in a stand-up act. It's pretty simple.
And I just want to say, Nate Bargatze opened for me at a college 10 or 12 years ago, and I think our careers have basically gone in the same direction since then.
Yeah.
We're both
when are you hosting Saturday Night Live?
Well, I'm watching Saturday Night Live. Things are going great.
Jay, let me get this plug in for you. Jay's everybody's good as Bargatze, and Bargatze is great.
Yeah.
How this happened? You have bad PR, Jay, because you're great too. He's phenomenal. You should be having by now Netflix specials.
I'm working on. I got to get the cheekbones first.
I save it. Maybe comb your hair once a month, something like that.
Oh my God, Angelo!
I actually did comb it today. I don't know what happened. All right,
like good-looking comics get more social media now.
So I know. I'm going to
try that.
I got to get I'm getting cheekbones. Oh, there we go. Rhea, let's switch over to British Corner and Teen Corner. What do you got for us this week?
Okay, so I have Dublin Murders. It popped up. I don't know which streamer it popped up on, because it's actually on Stars. But I think it might have popped up on my Prime, where I could watch the first episode for free on Stars. I said, okay, hey, Irish murder mystery. This is right up my alley. And so the first episode was free on Stars. So I watch it. And as I'm watching it, I go, I'm kind of intrigued. It's a murder mystery. 2 young cops, a man and a woman, who were both very good. I did put their names in here. Killian Scott is the guy who plays Rob Riley, and Sarah Green plays Cassie Maddox. So they're investigating the murder of this young girl, I would say around 12 years old, in the woods. And it turns out that Rob Riley, the male detective, has some sort of connection. It will become very clear by the second episode what his connection is, that there was a similar murder in those woods of young children 27 years ago. So there's an intersection. As I'm watching it, I go, this seems familiar to me. And so I looked it up. It's based on a book, a series of books by Tana French. And I read the book. This book came out in 2007, excuse me. And I struggled with it. I struggled with that it was trying to be too moody and the movie, the episodes were the same thing. It was close to grabbing me, but they weren't there. That they wanted to, there's always baggage with these detectives. But it was like the show couldn't figure out if it wanted to be real edgy or real dark moody. So I said, I'm going to pay for episode 2, which was $2.99. I watched it. I'm not going to get the rest of it. Now, it got good ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, 79%. It just didn't grab me, which didn't surprise me when I remembered I had actually read the book it was based off of. So, but people do like it. it wasn't enough for me.
Name and network, Rhea. Where'd you
So
see it?
it's Dublin Murders on Stars. And the reason I don't have the Stars app. So that's why I said, let me watch it for free. I bought the second episode and I was like, I don't think I'm going to watch the rest of it.
Yeah, I wonder if those ratings are mostly because everybody loves anybody with an Irish accent. It's real hard to dislike somebody with a good Irish accent.
And I will say the two actors really, I did like them. I just didn't like the story.
Gotcha. And what do you have for us this week on Teen Corner?
So Teen Corner, now this is going to be funny because I know Angelo also watched it. Clark and I last weekend watched, and I'd never heard of this. It's on Netflix. It's called Bury, the 1982 Alpine Meadows Avalanche. And this was an avalanche at a snow resort in 1982 in which several people were killed. And they did a documentary on it. I was totally enthralled by it. I mean, they have all, like most of the people, the snow people who work the resort were also responsible as like the first responders. What I was fascinated by, there were two main guys in it who were really young when this happened, and that they kind of had a, not a competition, but they didn't particularly like each other. And, 40 plus years later, that still comes out in it. But they go through, it's really raw, in which they go through all the mistakes they made that really led to the deaths of some innocent people. But I was also fascinated that there's snow avalanche science, which was kind of created during this, that they know when their avalanche is going to happen. They try to use military grade artillery to create avalanches so they're less likely to be as massive as this one. But I just really thought it was well told. It was gripping, and there is a twist in it. I'm not giving it away because Clark and I both jumped out of our seats at the twist. We were blown away. I loved it. I thought it was really a gripping story that I had never heard of.
Jay, I was unable to jump out of my seat because something happened when I was watching this documentary that has not happened to me in front of a TV in years. Within 15 minutes, I was sound asleep.
Ah.
It is the most boring start to a documentary I've ever seen. And if Rhea were being 100% honest, hold on, Rhea. Just be 100% honest. Rhea watched the whole thing and loved it. But she initially watched the first 15 minutes and fell into her REM sleep cycle.
No, and right, I will tell you, see, Angelo's not telling the whole story. I still wake up at 2:45 Monday through Friday. I put this on like 9 o'clock. I was flipping around on Friday night, and I fell asleep. And I told you, I woke up first thing the next morning, and Clark and I put it back on and watched it. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I fell asleep. It was only because I had been up since 2:45.
Well, and Clark was in the boot, so he couldn't get away, Angelo. That's why
I think what Rhea's saying is important here. If you're going to watch that documentary, do it right after a whole night's sleep. Don't do it in the latter part of the day where it will probably enhance your ability to fall asleep.
This is where he's wrong. 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
All right, I'll tell you what. We'll do a contest. I put it to the audience. I'm going to put up a Twitter poll next week.
Please.
Everybody listening, go watch the doc, and you come in and say, who do you agree with, Angelo or Rhea? And we will have the results next week is what we'll do.
I love it.
When I was a kid, by the way,
that's fun. I'm going to win, Rhea. I'm going to win.
When I was a kid, I used to watch all of the disaster movies in the 70s. It was like my thing, Killer Bee movie, Earthquake. And I watched Avalanche with Rock Hudson, Mia Farrow, Forster. And I remember being so scared. And I said to my dad, I'm so scared of avalanches. And my dad was like, I think we're okay here in Marlton. I don't think you need to worry, okay, but we don't go skiing. So I think you can relax. Yes. Angela, what do you got for us this week?
I'm going to go super quick here, Jay, because the best thing I saw this week is what you're about to review. That is great. The best thing. I was unaware of it. So let me just give you two things that I liked but didn't love. One is getting a ton of buzz on Netflix. It's called The Killer. It is directed by David Fincher, starring Michael Fassbender. And he's terrific at it. it's a Fincher film, so it's incredibly stylish, slow build drama about a contract killer. But the guy himself, there's no one here to love. The protagonist is a kind of robotic and has no real personality, and I didn't ever completely connect with it. And the second season of this started. I may have recommended it a year ago. I will recommend it again because of one performance in Rhea. It's an English actress named Sarah Lancashire. Sarah Lancashire. She plays Julia Child in Julia. And
wow.
The show itself is okay. She is so brilliant in it. And she has completely channeled that great French chef, Julia Child. And it's worth watching. I watch it all the time. And
she's a fantastic Angelo. She's so good. I've reviewed two of her shows that she's been in, Happy Valley and another one. She is a beloved English actress. She's really good.
Here's what bugged me, because my mind, wanders from time to time. David Hyde Pierce is in it. He plays her husband. David Hyde Pierce agreed to do 2 seasons of Julia, but refused to go back to Frasier.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't have the answer. I'm just telling you, it's kind of weird, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's got to be more money in Frasier.
Way more money in Frasier. I'm sure they would have
given more money in Frasier.
Anything he wanted. Well, let's talk about the one.
Jack, let's do the great one. You found a great one.
HBO Max. Well, I guess it's just Max now. Has a great documentary by Rob Reiner, who happens to be best friends with a guy named Albert Brooks. Now, we talked a lot about bad comedy on this show. Albert Brooks, the most amazing thing you can say about Albert Brooks is they go through and they find all of these old variety show appearances that he did in the 70s and 80s. And I would argue they are still ahead of their time, that they are still cutting edge. And, the word punk rock comes up a lot in the documentary to describe him. This idea of not caring a whit whether or not he gets a laugh, and in doing so, getting these tremendous laughs. He was rocketed to a kind of fame. He went to a Hollywood high school with Rob Reiner and Richard Dreyfuss and a bunch of other Nepo babies. And Carl Reiner went on the Tonight Show, and Johnny Carson asked him who the funniest person he knows is. And he said, it's actually a friend of my son named Albert Einstein. That's his actual name. Albert
that's
Einstein.
Right.
Change it to Albert Brooks. And if you are a fan of comedy and you want to see a guy as a stand-up comic, they interview a ton of other great stand-up comics who all have the same amount of awe for this guy who had a comic mind that was beyond what anybody really had. And Angela, you know what I loved about this whole thing is that it really was built around 2 best friends and the conversation between Reiner and Brooks.
The friendship thing was great. It brought you back to amazing movies, Real Life, Modern Romance, Lost in America, and this is in my top 10 of all time, Defending Your Life.
Yep.
It's so profound and incredible. Rhea, I don't know if you've seen that. His love interest in it is Meryl Streep and their dad. They're both dads.
Seen that? That's a great movie.
Isn't that a great movie?
It's phenomenal.
What this documentary gives you that I didn't know, and I thought I knew a lot of what was going on in Albert Brooks's career, it shows his early stuff.
Yeah.
Which was so unconventional, so crazy that he would do things that he didn't test until he went on Johnny Carson's show.
Oh,
it's insane.
And sometimes there's a story out that the second time he went in, he played a mime who speaks, who never shuts up, a mime, right? Yeah, they're doing all that stuff. And that it totally bombed. And he didn't care. No. It was like an experimental comic. Jay, that takes guts, doesn't it, to get up there not knowing?
It is, guts is the wrong word for it. It is almost lunacy. It's like hearing about those guys that do like underwater demolition. No comic ever does that. Like to this day, it doesn't happen. That he would just go in and go, hey, I thought of this on the way in. Let me give it a shot. Your manager would put a bullet in your head if you tried to do that. Like, are you insane? You're going to take your one shot at Carson and do that? It's nuts. And I'll tell you, his wife, who said, I watched Defending Your Life and said, I'd like to marry someone who thinks like that. And then they wind up getting married. I mean, it's a beautiful story. If you care about the history of not just comedy, but like television, like that great time in the 70s and 80s when there was all those variety shows, it's just well worth your time.
It's one of the best things I've seen in a while. Check it out. It's actually called Defending Your Life. That's what the documentary, and it's on Max. Check that one out. I'll put that one first because that's the best recommendation we got this week. If you want to see if you want to see Charissa Thompson make stories up, she works both at Fox and Amazon. Yes. Coyote versus Acme is not out yet, but when it is, it will be on Max because they're the ones that put the money up. Matt Rife, you could see on TikTok if you want to see a hack perform. Rhea had the Dublin Murders. She's not in love with it. It's on Stars, and she found a documentary called Buried, which I would suggest is where it should be, but it is on Netflix, and I am offering you The Killer on Netflix and Julia on Max. Both are okay.
And I just want to throw out the Continental Sports Podcast. You can find that on Apple or wherever you find podcasts. That was Jared Clapper, our producer's podcast. Loud by Angelo Cataldi. Yes. The history of his time at WIP. You got to go to angelocataldi.com. You want a hardback? Go there. Go to Chicky and Pete's on Friday and Saturday. And you can see Angelo live and he'll do a book signing for you. And, go to our socials, follow us there. Follow me on Twitter. Jay Black is funny on Twitter because that's where the poll's going to be. And you can tell us whether or not you think Angelo's right or Rhea's right. And we'll be back next week. And guess what, guys? It's Thanksgiving. So have a happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye, everybody.
We'll see you next week. As soon as I can turn this off.